Hey there, welcome to my channel. Today, we're diving into a thrilling story where Santa Claus is uncovered from an ancient mountain, only he's no jolly gift giver. Instead, he's a terrifying horned creature, and now the mission is to destroy him before he devours all the children. We'll be recapping the 2010 movie Rare Exports. The story unfolds in the snowy landscape of Finnish Lapland, starting 24 days before Christmas. An American company, Sub-Zero Inc., is conducting drilling operations atop Korvatunturi Hill. Foreman Mr. Green rushes to inform the project manager, Mr. Riley, about an unusual discovery. They found a 20-meter thick layer of sawdust 400 meters below the surface. At first, Green suspects they've hit old wood, but Riley explains that in ancient times, people used sawdust to preserve ice, suggesting that the mountain is a massive freezer containing something mysterious. Knowing exactly what's buried, Riley insists the drilling continue and hands Green a memo with odd instructions, like washing behind his ears, a seemingly strange but serious warning. Nearby, two local boys, Pietari and Juuso, secretly watch the drilling, despite it being off-limits. They overhear the workers and learn that they're about to blow up the hill. Juuso, translating some of the English, tells Pietari what's happening. Pietari believes Santa Claus is buried inside the mountain, though Juuso dismisses the idea, teasing that Santa doesn't exist. At that moment, the mountain explodes, catching their attention. Later that evening, Pietari dives into old books about Santa Claus, discovering illustrations of a menacing, horned figure. These books depict Santa as a monstrous being who punishes naughty children, even boiling them in cauldrons. As Christmas approaches, Pietari's father, Rauno, sets up a wolf trap outside their house, unaware that something far more dangerous is about to be unleashed. The boy's room is filled with books about Santa, and he spent the entire night awake, sitting by the window, too afraid to sleep. However, he eventually dozes off in the early morning hours. He's jolted awake by his father's call and a snowball hitting his window. Panicked, Pietari jumps up, regretting that he fell asleep and left himself vulnerable to the evil Santa. In a rush, Pietari seals the last window on his advent calendar, determined not to open it. Christmas terrifies him. Looking out the window, Pietari notices strange barefoot footprints on the porch roof, sending a chill down his spine. He wants to ask his father about it, but is too scared to enter the slaughterhouse where Rauno is working. Mustering his courage, Pietari finally walks inside and nervously asks if his father had been walking on the roof. Rauno dismisses the question and tells Pietari not to let his imagination run wild. He also instructs his son to get ready because they'll be heading out to herd reindeer soon. Pietari realizes that it must have been Santa walking on the roof, watching him. Later, as the family prepares to meet the other reindeer herders, Rauno hands Pietari a loaded rifle for the first time and heads toward the corral. Juuso, Pietari's friend, is also there, and Pietari warns him that Santa Claus had been lurking under his window at night. Juuso mocks Pietari, refusing to believe him. One of the herders, Piiparinen, suspects the explosions on the mountain may have scared wolves into the area, making their reindeer herding more dangerous. None of the adults know what's truly happening atop Korvatunturi. Soon, the reindeer begin to arrive, and the herders prepare for the hunt, expecting to sell the meat for profit. But something is terribly wrong. Apart from two young deer, none of the others show up. Realizing something bad must have happened to the herd, Rauno, Piiparinen, Juuso, and Pietari set off on snowmobiles to search for them. When they reach the fence around Korvatunturi, they discover the entire herd has been wiped out. Aimo, another herder and Juuso's father, points out a hole in the fence, the one Pietari and Juuso secretly made to sneak through. The men assume dangerous wolves have escaped from behind the fence and slaughtered the reindeer. Pietari, knowing they are responsible for the hole, remains silent. As the herders count the carcasses, they realize they've lost $85,000 worth of livestock, which could bankrupt them. Pietari inspects one of the deer and notices a barefoot footprint beneath it. He knows the real culprit isn't wolves, it's the hungry Santa. Angered by the devastation, Rauno and his friends decide to confront the workers at the drilling site. Armed with guns, they storm the site later that evening, but the place is deserted. It's clear the workers fled in a hurry. Inside the office, Pietari finds a diagram of the mountain's interior and realizes the workers have uncovered Santa Claus. The men gather around a massive hole, baffled by the scene. Rauno tosses a flare into the pit, but it's too deep to see anything. Disappointed, the group returns home. That evening, Rauno starts preparing meat for their Christmas feast, while Pietari seals the final window of the advent calendar with a stapler. Meanwhile, Juuso, sitting at home, remains skeptical of Pietari's fears. Determined to protect himself, Pietari dons a hockey uniform, hoping it will shield him from the evil Santa. He shows Juso drawings from his books, which depict Santa in his true devilish form. He also reveals the diagram he took from the mountain office. From his research, Pietari learned that long ago, the people of Lapland grew tired of Santa's cruelty and trapped him by luring him onto ice, which eventually froze over, imprisoning him. They then extracted the massive ice block and buried it beneath a mountain, now known as Korvatunturi. Juso laughs off the story, but Pietari grasps the danger and wants to confess to his father about making the hole in the fence. Juso, however, is firmly against it, fearing his parents' wrath if they found out. Soon after, Pietari heads home and makes his way to his father's kitchen. Rauno gives him gingerbread and milk for dinner and lights some candles. However, Rauno is not in a festive mood. Pietari compliments the gingerbread, saying it tastes just like his mother used to make. His mother's absence, having passed away several years ago, only deepens Rauno's somber mood. Pietari asks if he's been a good boy and wonders if his father would be upset if he disappeared. Rauno, avoiding the topic, simply sends Pietari to bed. Before leaving, he quietly wishes Pietari a Merry Christmas, wiping away tears caused by memories and the weight of their current troubles. That night, Pietari refuses to sleep. Sitting by the window, he holds a bunch of keys in his hand, planning to let them fall and make noise if he dozes off, hoping the sound will wake him. Despite his efforts, the keys fall, and he eventually drifts off to sleep. Meanwhile, something eerie happens at Korvatunturi. The foreman, Green, urgently radios the manager, insisting on a helicopter for evacuation. The cargo they had extracted from the mountain turned out to be a living creature, terrifying the workers. But Riley, the manager who had left earlier, dismisses Green's concerns and demands the cargo be delivered to him. As they're talking, a mysterious figure appears on the mountain and wipes out the crew. Green is horrified when he finds himself face to face with a creature with bare feet. Christmas is fast approaching. Rauno, frustrated, pulls some burnt meat from the oven and shoves it back in angrily. While attempting to light the fireplace, there's a loud pop and a cloud of soot explodes into his face. His screams wake Pietari, who rushes to his father's side. Rauno, startled, grabs a chair and inspects the fireplace, discovering that Pietari had set a trap for Santa inside it. Rauno, thinking it's a ridiculous prank, threatens to ground Pietari, but Pietari rushes outside and freezes in fear. The bait over the wolf trap is gone. Hearing his son's panicked cries, Rauno comes running. Cautiously approaching the trap, Rauno first finds bird feathers, but then sees something far more disturbing, a man. The man suddenly springs up, pulling Pietari away. Rauno tries to stay calm and prevent his son from looking any further into the hole. They return to the house, but Pietari, still on edge, demands to go back to the trap. Rauno, however, orders him to settle down. Soon after, Pietari arrives, dressed as Santa Claus, to wish Pietari a Merry Christmas. But Rauno intercepts him outside, asking for his help. Pietari overhears their conversation and decides to follow the men. He watches as Rauno and Pietari drag something large, wrapped in a bag, across the yard. They bring the bundle into the slaughterhouse and lay it out on the table. It turns out to be an old, decrepit man with a long beard. In his jacket, they find an American passport with the name Ryan Green, the foreman from the mountain. Rauno is unsure of what to do. On one hand, the old man trespassed on their property, but on the other, Rauno knows the wolf pit is illegal. After some consideration, the men decide to dispose of the old man to cover their tracks. Meanwhile, Pietari, left alone, rushes to the wolf trap and jumps in. At the bottom, he discovers a sack containing a creepy doll. Inside the slaughterhouse, Rauno and Pietari sharpen their knives, ready to deal with the old man. But suddenly, the old man jerks his hand away. He's alive. He begins sniffing the air, as though tracking a scent. At the same time, Pietari peeks through the window of the slaughterhouse, observing the strange events. Rauno notices Pietari and quickly runs outside to catch him, but the boy bolts toward the highway. Rauno gets in his car to follow him, and soon spots Pietari climbing into the sheriff's vehicle. Frustrated, Rauno follows them to Imo's house. Once there, the sheriff reports that strange things have been happening all day. Rauno reassures them that he and Pietari are fine. Just then, Imo emerges and leads the group to his barn, revealing that several hundred sacks of potatoes were stolen, but oddly emptied out. The sheriff, puzzled, explains that various appliances, including stoves and heaters, have been stolen from most homes in the village, even knocking down walls to gain entry. Imo suspects the American company is behind the thefts, using the items to build some mysterious technology. Rauno tries to leave, but Pietari heads to Juso's room, thinking his friend is still asleep. However, he finds the same eerie doll from the wolf trap under the blanket. Pietari rushes outside to tell the others that Juso has been taken, but the sheriff assumes the boy is just off visiting a girl. The men dismiss the concerns, and Rauno asks Imo to come to the slaughterhouse to speak with the old man in English, believing him to be a worker from the American company. Imo is the only one in the village who speaks English. Meanwhile, Piparinen watches over the old man while eating Christmas gingerbread. The old man continues sniffing the air as if he smells the treat. Piparinen teases him, and suddenly the old man starts making strange noises. As Piparinen leans in closer, the old man violently attacks him. Rauno, Pietari, and Imo rush to the slaughterhouse, where a shaken Piparinen greets them at the door, nursing a bite on his ear. He warns them that the intruder doesn't behave like a normal human. Despite his warnings, the men charge inside. They find the naked old man crouching ominously in a corner. The men assume his bizarre behavior is due to his being a foreigner. Imo points his rifle at him and tries to ask some neutral questions, but the old man remains unresponsive. Rauno attempts to prod him with a stick, but there's still no reaction. Amo, getting frustrated, sits beside him and declares loudly that they need money. Meanwhile, Pietari begins calling the parents of his friends, discovering that none of the children have been home all day. The boy tries to hide his worry, but the disappearance of the village children weighs heavily on his mind. At the slaughterhouse, the old man is interrogated using a broom, but he remains indifferent. Imo suspects that the old man is just pretending to be deaf to gain sympathy and be released. However, the men decide to hold him hostage until the American company pays a ransom. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. It's Pietari, who wants to speak to his father. As soon as the old man catches the boy's scent, he turns toward the door. Rauno steps out, and Pietari, holding a twig, asks his father to punish him for being disobedient, especially for making a hole in the fence near the mountain with Juso. Rauno is confused, and Pietari explains that Santa has taken all the children for being naughty. Their conversation is interrupted by Piparinen, who calls Rauno back into the slaughterhouse, where they find that the old man has chewed through the broom. Everyone is horrified and steps back, but Pietari enters the room out of curiosity. When the old man sees him, he stands up. Rauno quickly pulls Pietari closer to the old man, and the boy explains that this isn't just any old man. It's Santa Claus, come to kidnap the children. The adults finally believe Pietari and realize that this creature had been unearthed from the depths of Corvatunturi Mountain. The old man begins to move toward Pietari, but the men point their guns at him and manage to tie him up. With the old man subdued, the group watches him while eating Christmas gingerbread. Suddenly, a radio crackles to life in the jacket the old man took from the foreman, Green. Riley's manager is checking in, unaware of what has transpired. He tells the men that a helicopter will arrive in half an hour to load up Santa. But the group has different plans. They respond, saying they're ready to deliver Santa themselves and negotiate a price. The men dress the old man in a Santa Claus suit and place him in a cage, preparing to take him to Corvatunturi. Throughout the journey, the old man keeps his gaze fixed on Pietari, eyeing him like prey. The adults discuss how much they should ask for, knowing they need at least $85,000 to cover the loss of their reindeer. When they arrive at the mountain, Imo finds his wife's hairdryer on the ground and wonders how it got there. His thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of the helicopter, and Mr. Riley steps out. Imo struggles to communicate in English, so Riley remains confused about what happened to his men and why these armed Finns are demanding $85,000. To clarify, the group reveals the caged old man dressed as Santa. Riley approaches, curiously touching the man's beard. While the adults are distracted, Pietari slips away and heads to a large hangar. Meanwhile, the old man in the cage lifts his head and glares at Riley, his eyes glowing ominously. Riley panics and tells the Finns to lower their guns and smile. He reveals that the caged man is not Santa, but one of his elves. The men, still confused, continue to demand payment. Suddenly, the lights on the mountain go out and the helicopter pilot's screams are heard as he vanishes. Riley warns that Santa is now coming for the naughtiest children. As the men ready their guns, they realize they are surrounded by eerie, naked old men, Santa's elves preparing to defend their master. The elves swiftly eliminate Riley and close in on the others. At this point, Rauno realizes Pietari is missing. As they fend off the attacking elves, the men rush into the hangar and discover the boy inside. Once they shut the doors, they are met with a terrifying sight. In the middle of the hangar sits a massive horned creature encased in ice, Santa Claus. The elves had stolen stoves and heaters from the villagers and brought them to Santa's lair to melt the ice, and it wouldn't be long before he was free. Next to the ice block are numerous bags, and from inside, the men can hear children's voices. The elves had captured the children for their master, so he could punish them when he awoke. Juso is among them, and upon hearing his father's voice, he begins to cry for help. Imo rushes to the bags, desperately searching for his son, while outside, the elves are breaking down the hangar doors. Rauno and Piparinen turn off the heaters and try to block the entrance with them. Imo eventually finds Juso and embraces him, but the ice surrounding Santa begins to crack dangerously, though not enough for him to escape, yet. In the midst of the chaos, Piparinen panics, convinced that no one will make it out alive. The adults are frantic and the children are crying, but Pietari remains calm and starts to devise a rescue plan. He spots a hole in the roof of the hangar, and an idea forms in his mind. However, no one can hear him over the noise. Desperate to get their attention, Pietari fires a shotgun into the air. The room falls silent, and everyone turns to him. Pietari explains that as long as the children are in the hangar, the elves won't stop coming. Santa must be destroyed, and there's dynamite stored in the hangar that can do the job. The adults quickly agree to follow Pietari's plan. Piparinen, who knows how to fly a helicopter, steps outside carefully, armed with gingerbread. He distributes the cookies to the elves, who are immediately distracted and greedily start eating. Seizing the moment, Piparinen makes a run for the helicopter and takes off, maintaining radio contact with Pietari. The children in the bags are placed into a cargo net, which is hooked to the helicopter through the hole in the hangar roof. Pietari grabs onto the net as well, insisting that all the children need to be together for the plan to succeed. Rauno and Imo stay behind in the hangar to do their part. As they watch Pietari flying off in the helicopter, they are amazed that such a young boy is leading them. With the helicopter lifting the children away from the mountain, Pietari instructs Piparinen to hover over the forest to lure the elves out. The elves, smelling that the children are no longer in the hangar, begin chasing after the helicopter. The plan is to use the children as bait to lead the elves to the empty reindeer pen, where they can be trapped. Back in the hangar, Rauno and Imo drill holes in the ice block surrounding Santa and insert sticks of dynamite into the holes. Admiring their work, they decide to take a small souvenir. Using a chainsaw, they cut off Santa's horns, thinking they might sell them for a profit later. Meanwhile, the helicopter reaches the reindeer pen, but there's a problem. The gates are closed. With no time to alter the plan, Pietari decides to go down to the pen himself and open the gate. Due to the hanging net, Piparinen can't land the helicopter to pick Pietari up later. Inside the enclosure, the elves could easily harm him, but Pietari is unfazed. He's willing to sacrifice himself. Ignoring Piparinen's pleas, Pietari jumps from the net onto a pole, slides into the pen, and opens the heavy gate for the elves, who are now close. He activates the electric fence to ensure the elves can't escape. Before facing them, Pietari asks Piparinen to tell Rauno about his brave act. As the enraged elves charge at him, Pietari, terrified, closes his eyes and thinks of his father. Meanwhile, Imo and Rauno drive away from the hangar containing Santa. When they are far enough, Rauno presses the detonator, blowing up the building and destroying the monstrous Santa. Rauno watches the explosion in stunned relief, congratulating himself on a successful Christmas. Back in the pen, Pietari opens his eyes and realizes the elves aren't attacking. They simply stand there, confused and powerless. Piparinen, watching the explosion from the helicopter, laughs and informs Pietari over the radio that Santa has been destroyed, leaving the elves jobless. Relieved, Pietari is thrilled that his plan worked and no one else was hurt. He then asks Piparinen to take the children back home, as they should be in their beds by now. The helicopter heads back to the village, and Pietari watches the snowfall. At dawn, Rauno, Imo, and Juso arrive at the reindeer pen, where Pietari has been waiting. He has locked the elves inside and counted 198 of them. Pietari suggests they could sell the elves, passing them off as Santa Clauses. Rauno proposes charging $85,000 for each Santa, and Imo asks his son to calculate the total profit. The sum comes to about $17 million. Overcome with pride, Rauno embraces Pietari as they both admire the captured elves and the sunrise over the mountains. As the year progresses, the holidays pass, and preparations begin for next Christmas. With 312 days remaining, the friends corral the elves and give them showers. 76 days before Christmas, they start training the elves to hold children, stroke their heads, and give out presents. Everyone takes part in the training, Rano guides Pietari in showing the elves how to properly care for children, while Imo oversees their discipline, even placing festive caps on the best students as a rite of passage into becoming Santa Clauses. 24 days before Christmas, the friends box up the newly trained Santas, ready to sell them to countries around the world. Piparinen now owns a cargo plane and prepares to take off with the shipment of Santas. Do you believe in Santa Claus? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie summaries. See you next time.